compensated, even if you did the entire job, if you didn't have the forms in place. However, if you did do the job without the forms in place, you have full liability. They can sue you, they can sue me. So it's a one-edged sword. It only cuts you. Now, recently here in Utah, in fact, May 7th, it went into effect. They passed a new law that clarified things just a little bit, provided a little bit of protection. But this is a problem that is across the country. It's a result, I think this big lawsuit that we had, that Sitzer versus Burnett, it kind of changed the scope of real estate nationwide, I think is a little bit of a result of this kind of thing as well. And it's agents not explaining well what it is we do, and agents not drawing healthy boundaries. Okay? Now, healthy boundaries isn't something that we're all taught very well. In fact, 45 years old, I'm going through visiting a therapist. I'm getting personal with you guys now after a failed marriage, and that's when I'm learning about boundaries. Because prior to that, I'm taught my whole life, turn the other cheek, be a good guy. And I think it's noble to make these sacrifices. It's not noble, all right? What is noble is standing up for what is right. There's difference between being what is the word? A good guy and a nice guy, right? A good guy does not let people trample them. A nice guy doesn't want to make waves. So they don't require things to be done correctly. And nice guys cause problems. Nice guys cause damage. Again, free therapy session. I learned it all. Paying for it. I get to pass all this stuff on to you guys for free. Okay? So, implied agency is a result of people usually trying to be nice. Your mom calls you up and says, hey, son, can you help me out with this? Or your best friend calls you up. And has anybody worked? We've got some experienced agents on here. Has anybody here worked with a friend or a family member and it was just a nightmare deal? Are they some of the hardest transactions you ever have, Miles? Yeah?
Yeah, so I had a deal that was just steeped in family. We were selling my grandmother's condo and my dad was the POA. So I had to mitigate just all of them in the middle of it. And there was another agent that, just to get into my story, there was another agent that I guess plays hockey with my dad very well, and he ended up getting in the middle of the deal and got complicated. It sorted out, but yeah, I learned not to do deals directly with family. We refer those to other good agents now.
It's hard. It is hard. Some of my worst transactions have been with family as well. And the thing is that they're innocent. See, they don't know any better. So one of my favorite quotes, and I use it in other trainings, is, you'll recognize it from Spider-Man, except for I reverse it around. Do you remember the quote that Uncle Ben had? With great power comes great responsibility. You switch that around, it's fantastic. With great responsibility comes great power. When we own all of these things, when we say, you know what, I have control over all of these things, it makes us very powerful, not just as agents, but as people in general. When you take ownership, when you play the victim card, then you're powerless, right? Oh, I can't succeed because I'm a white male in America and we're so depressed or oppressed, right? Whatever it is. We could play the race card. We could play it on religion. We could say I'm brand new in this area, so that's why I'm not successful. But for every time that we play a victim card, I could point to 10 other people that fit that exact same class that have made it, and they've made it big, right? So when we accept responsibility for our lives, we become very powerful. In this case, with implied agency, it typically is happening because we're trying to help friends or family out. So helping a friend or family member by providing forms, helping them fill stuff out. Now, here in Utah, the law that they just passed, they clarified and said, hey, you can provide people with some of the forms, because a lot of these forms, well, just a few of them actually, are public record. They're available on the Division of Real Estate website. Most of the forms that we have are copyrighted by the Utah Association of Realtors or your local association or state association of Realtors. There's a group of attorneys there, and agents always wonder, what are my board dues for? Why do we need the board? A lot of it is the legal stuff. Okay, it's their attorneys that have created the hundreds of forms that we use every day in our work. So if I'm just helping a friend or a family member out by providing them forms, that alone hasn't created implied agency. However, they don't typically know how to fill out those forms, and that's the point where I've crossed the line. Okay? Hey, how do I do this? Could you look this over for me and make sure it's good? And the minute that we do that, we've crossed the line. Now we have agency by implication. What that means is that our friend or family member, not knowing any differently, eventually will land themselves in a lawsuit because they don't know what they're doing. And when the attorneys get involved, the attorneys say, tell me how you got these forms, how'd you fill them out? Well, my son's a real estate agent, or my brother or my cousin is a real estate agent, my best friend's a real estate agent, and he provided me with these. And so I thought I was doing things right. Now the attorney's ears perk up, and it's not necessarily the family or the friend or anything else that are trying to throw you under the bus. But if they're faced with a $100,000 lawsuit because they failed to properly disclose things, and their attorney is saying, well, if your friend was involved, they should have helped you through this. They have E&O insurance. It's not going to hurt them. You can save $100,000, and we pin it on Amanda. And Amanda said, well, I was just trying to help you out. What is this about? And your friend is thinking, well, you have E&O, so it doesn't really hurt you, which, by the way, isn't the case. It's a $25,000 deductible. Somebody's got to help meet that with E&O. And it's insurance, and just like all insurance, they do what they can to not pay out, or our premiums go up. So anyways, our friends or family are presented as a get out of jail free card, and we get thrown under the bus for doing it. So I've given you a lot of background. Here's the bottom line. When you're working with friends or family, don't cut corners. Anybody else, you would sit down and do a full listing presentation. You would sit down and you'd do a full buyer presentation. If you think for your mom, I don't need to do a buyer presentation for mom. She loves me. She's using me because she loves me. So does that mean we give mom the very worst service possible? Does that mean mom doesn't need to know the value that we provide? Don't we want mom or our best friends to be our ambassadors? We want them telling everybody, hey, go use Eric, go use Amanda, because they're fantastic. They did an incredible job for me. And that only happens when they see our full suite of services. Hey, give my son a call. When we bought a home, he sat down with us. He went through the whole process with us and helped us understand everything so that it really made us feel comfortable. That's how you get referrals. Funnily enough, most agents don't do that with friends or family. They cut corners because it's not necessary in order to get the contract signed. So we're not providing our best service. So we need to own that. And anytime a friend or a family member wants to work with us, we give them the full suite of our services. Okay? So because I've been training on this forever, by the way. This didn't change when the lawsuit came out last year. I've been training on this for 20 years. Before you ever show homes, you should have an agreement signed. And I get so much pushback. There was so much resistance all across the nation when that lawsuit settled. And agents are like, why should we have, even some of my favorite podcasters were saying things like, why should I do this as a buyer? I mean, it's like dating and marriage. We need to go out a little bit, see if we like each other. And I've always just thought, bullcrap, right? We never do this with sellers. We never say, here, let me just list your home for a few weeks and see if we like each other. First of all, it's against the law, right? We have to have an agreement in place. And second of all, it's just ludicrous. Why would we be out working for free? And yet buyers agents fought all across the country for this right, all this public outcry because we need to be able to do work for free. That's insane. If somebody wants to go see homes and they're asking you to give your time, they should understand why you're giving your time. They should understand the full value that you provide. You're not just an Uber driver with the magic key, right? There's so much more that you bring to the table. They need to understand all of that. The other way where implied agency comes into play is when sometimes There are some companies that do like an MLS entry only. Give us $500-600, whatever, $1,000. We'll put you on the MLS. We're not going to help you with anything else. And so here, as buyer's agents, we end up working with a seller that is completely uneducated. They don't know their forms, and sometimes we end up helping them out a little bit too much. So there are some things that we can do. Here's some of the real life people that kind of fell under the boot of these mistakes. In this case, Vicki Wiley, this is Washington County, not Washington State. Several violations over the course of 15 transactions, probably why the fine was bigger. Failed to obtain written informed consent, required to represent both parties. So she didn't have written agency agreements. Used outdated listing agreements. So if anybody has a listing agreement saved on their computer, because it's really easy to just put it on the desktop and then you can click it, fill it out, delete those, right? Start filling out your forms from your service provider, whether it's the MLS or it's .lu. Those forms are updated, right? But she had to pay $10,000 and an extra 20 years of education, license on probation. Now her broker, I'm guessing this is her broker, because even though he's in Arizona, it's right across the border from Washington County. And it was in the same newsletter. He got double the fine for almost all the same things. So brokers, fun fact, get almost double the fine, because one of our jobs is to actively supervise our agents. And if an agent has done this over 15 transactions, a broker's probably not actively supervising. But he got a $20,000 fine. That's a crappy way to spend money, isn't it? I'd much rather go out and buy a razor or something. And I'm not talking a razor to shave. Some of you guys might be thinking that's what I need. But no, I'm talking about the fun doom buggy type things. That'd be a much more fun way to spend $20,000, but they made a mistake of not paying attention to those details. This is a little one. Ms. Fry assisted a buyer with the purchase of a property without getting written agency. And then she made up her own legal document, which, by the way, I see all the time. Somebody simply, they're not sure the forms that they have available to them, so they make up some language, and she got to spend $1,000 for that. So ways that you protect yourself. Always sign an agency agreement up front. That means you sit down, you do a buyer presentation, you do a listing presentation before anything else. And again, I referenced earlier my training on working with buyers. Before I set up hot sheets, before I send them anything, they understand my value, right? I do not work for free. If I am dealing with a fee-for-service agent where they've just paid a fee to get it onto the MLS, then I want to get a form signed by the seller disclosed so I can get an unrepresented buyer form, or I can get a for sale by owner form. If I'm dealing with somebody that's unrepresented, then I need to have that form in place. So the for sale owner agreement in particular, sometimes our buyers are paying our commission, and we think, well, we don't need the for sale by owner agreement because our buyers have agreed to pay the commission, right? The for sale by owner agreement also has language that protects us from agency by implication. So even if we're not getting paid by the seller, this for sale by owner, we still need the for sale by owner commission agreement and agency disclosure. That's the full name and form. We need that agency disclosure part in there. And then, of course, if there's another brokerage that they just paid a fee to, and that brokerage says, yeah, just call the agent or call the client directly. They paid us to put it on the MLS, but we're really not helping them with the rest of the transaction. Save that email so that you have permission to deal directly with the client, and we don't face a lawsuit later on of another agent saying you're trying to interfere with their contractual agreement with their client by going around them dealing with the client. So just some really simple things that you can do to protect yourself there. Okay. Here's another one, a little $500 for a limited agency one. All right, let's talk about earnest money really quick. First of all, when do we collect the earnest money? Who knows?
Within 4 days, right?
Okay, and now again, this is going to vary from state to state. Is it different, by the way? We had somebody, was it from Oklahoma?
Yeah, I believe we've got 72 hours.
You've got 72 hours? Okay, so here's an interesting thing. State law says 72 hours. Our purchase contract says 4 days. So which one rules? Well, state law actually says 72 hours unless otherwise agreed to in the contract. Since our contract's 4 days, it's 4 days. So what does that mean? When do we need to collect it? And you might be
As
thinking,
soon as-
well,
As timely as possible.
okay, what? And you're going to say the same thing, right, Amanda? As soon as possible.
Yeah. Mhm.
So here's why we want to do it as soon as possible, even though we have 4 calendar days. By the way, that's calendar days, not business days. The reason why we need to do it as soon as possible is what happens if we collect it on day 4, we get it deposited with title, and day 5, title contacts us and says, hey, by the way, that check bounced. It didn't clear. What do we have to do at this point? Anybody?
Well, we have to get the money, but don't we have to do an addendum?
Okay, we have to get the money.
Can't say that.
Are we technically in default, first of all, as a buyer?
Yes.
We're technically in default. We collected it on day 4, but it wasn't actually collected. It didn't clear. So technically, we're in default. There's penalties associated with default in the contract, right? So that's a risk we've put our clients at, or they've put themselves at because they gave us a bad check. What else do we have to do? Do we have to, even though we have a fiduciary duty of confidentiality, do we need to disclose this to the seller, or could we hurry and get a new check and just call it good?
I think it's always better to disclose it than hide it.
Okay.
Or is that wrong?
What do we have to do? Right? Now this, by the way, crosses state boundaries, so this should apply to anybody. Does anybody know what you have to do if you're past day 4? And again, Miles, you're going to be past day 3, right? With yours, and the earnest money hasn't been delivered. What do we have to do? No guesses? Okay, this is now what we call a material fact. Okay, material fact is defined as anything that, and sometimes we think of material as like something tangible, right? But a material fact isn't necessarily something tangible. It's something that would affect the whether or not, and usually we think of it as sellers disclosing material facts to buyers. And that would be anything that would affect the price they're willing to pay or their willingness to go under contract. But also material fact is defined as anything affecting their ability to perform on the contract. So what we now have is a material fact, and material facts by law have to be disclosed, whether you're the buyer or the seller. In this case, this is one of those rare instances where we have a buyer, we have a material fact that earnest money did not clear. We have to disclose that. We can't hide the fact. We can't hurry and try to scramble. So we're in a bad spot, right? Potentially our client's in default. We have to tell on them. And of course, we're going to have that conversation with our client saying, hey, this is now material. We have to disclose it. So we can avoid all of this. If we go under contract, I've got 3 days or 4 days to get that earnest money turned in. If I collect it on day 1, I find out it bounced on day 2. Do I have to tell anybody? No, I still got time, right? Call my client up. Hey, check bounce. Need to get real money. Oh, shoot. Sorry, I got paid today. I'll get that money in the account. We'll get you a new check. Okay, great. It gets done by day 3 for Miles, day 4 for Utah. We've got money in there. We're good to go, right? Now, again, we hold it with the title company. I've got different videos that talk about that. There's a lot of misinformation. Miles, do you hold it with title company in Oklahoma?
Yes, I believe here, because of the type of agency that we've got, there is an option for the brokerages to hold, but for the practice that I've seen, by and large, for the most part, we entrust the title companies exclusively, just always hold it.
That's my understanding in every state except Utah. And in Utah, for some reason, they are just bound and determined to spread misinformation about it. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today. I do have 2 separate videos on my YouTube channel about, there's a part 1 and part 2 about earnest money. If If you ever get pushback of why are you trying to hold it with title, that's where you go. And you can, and it's public, so you can share that with the other agent. You can share it with your client if you want to. It is better protected at title. So that's where we deposit it. That's why our policy is that. And of course, if it bounces, we've talked about that. So earnest money is very important that we have to disclose properly. So even though we've got deadlines that say you have until then, just like any other deadline, you've got your due diligence deadline. That doesn't mean we do our inspection on that deadline, right? We have to have all our issues resolved by that deadline, so we want to get it done as soon as possible. So here's pitfall number 3, and this is a simple one. Does everybody on here, or let's do it this way, does anybody not know how to check the status of their license? When it's about to expire, do you know when your license expires? Do you know how to check that? Do you know how to check how much CE you still need to do? Which classes you need to take? If you don't know where to go to check those things out, then you need to learn that right away. Here in Utah, you go to the Division of Real Estate's website, and they've got this new account that's still screwed up, at least from a broker's perspective. Managing it is very difficult. That one sign-in thing, whatever it is. But you go to realestate.utah.gov, and there's the links to sign in, and you can check out your license, right? Here's the thing to understand. A lot of agents, they're not plugged in, right? They're not attending regular trainings. And so when their license expires, some of them, it catches them completely by surprise. Now, in my office, I try to send a text out 2 months out, 1 month out, saying, hey, your license is expiring next month. Your license expires this month. I have agents that go in the last week, and they're just cramming. They're getting all 18 hours of CE done. They're paying extra money for it where they could have attended trainings throughout the year and had it all for free. They're paying a ton of money to get it crammed in at the last day. And what they don't understand is that the companies providing the CE have 2 weeks to get it turned into the state, or at least the state says we have 2 weeks to post it. So it isn't an immediate thing. And so you have to have these things done in advance. So don't wait until the very last minute, because here's the penalty for operating with an expired license. $5,000 per instance. And remember, your broker gets double those charges, right? So when I've had this happen, when an agent lets their license lapse, I call them up day 1 of the next month. I say, hey, just saw that your license lapsed. Do you have any buyers or sellers? And he says, you know what? I'm just finishing my last classes right now. I should have it renewed in the next 3 or 4 days, right? No big deal, right? What about their active buyers and sellers? Like if they've got an active listing, how easy is it to prove that they're operating with an expired license? When you've got an active listing, I can see it right there. I can look at your license and it shows expired. Do I want a $10,000 fine? Do I want you to get a $5,000? You might be willing to roll the dice and say, I don't think anybody's going to catch that in the next 3 days before I renew. Am I willing to roll the dice? No. And so now I have to be the bad guy. I have to say, look, you didn't get your license renewed. You have an active listing. I have to take that away from you. Have to. Not being a jerk, has nothing to do with that. We're talking about state law here. You cannot operate, you cannot do real estate with an expired license. Do you have any buyers? Well, yeah, I was going to go showing tonight. You can't. You are not a real estate agent as of right now. You will be in 3 days. Great. Show them homes in 3 days. Call and reschedule. You should be embarrassed. You should be humiliated because this is such a simple thing to stay on top of. So please do, right? It is a big deal. And agents treat it like it's no big deal if it lapses. It is a big deal. I have to take your business away. Okay? I have to give it to somebody else. And maybe in 3 or 4 days, I give it back to you. You should pay that other person because they fielded calls for you. It is money out of pocket. So this is a simple one, but it can every single month. So don't be one of those people. Now let's talk about a variety of different money problems. First of all, working with builders. Now this has been greatly resolved I know a lot of people didn't like the changes that came about because of that big lawsuit, the Sister Burnett case, but there are so many things that came about from it. Number one was a lot of times, and this seems crazy to some people because it's just their uh, modus operandi it's just their way of doing things, right? They go in. So Utah is kind of an anomaly where we have an MLS that covers almost the entire state. If you go to Denver, and there's I think like 20 MLSs just in Denver alone. And so they're in the habit of anytime they make an offer, they put their commission in the offer, right? This is something now that we do as a result of the Sitzer Burnett case. But prior to this, we're just making offers because it was in the MLS. We're taking it granted that we're getting paid. Now, a lot of times builders would say, hey, sure, we're going to pay you. We see that you're the agent. We have this disclosure saying that you're the agent, but you don't know how you're getting paid or how you're getting compensated. In fact, yesterday, I had an agent say, hey, I just got paid. It's short. I said, well, and he hadn't actually reviewed the closing disclosure, which he should have, right? So he reviewed his paperwork, and when he saw his paperwork, um, the builder had sent less money. So then he gets in and he sees that the builder's got the fine. Says, okay, we're paying you based off of sales price minus concessions. He's like, well, I guess I should have known that before. So when you're working with builders, make sure that you have things in writing. And sometimes the builders agents are not trained very well. They're not trained in real estate like we are. They're just trained to do what the builders' forms are. So make sure that when you're working with builders, you don't take their word for it. Get everything very clearly spelled out in writing. So when in doubt, write it out. Agents call me every day saying, here's the scenario. What do you think? How would you interpret it? And I would say, just the fact that we're on the phone right now is a good indication that it's not clear. And if you don't understand it, or there's a disagreement between how you and the other agent are interpreting it, granted, sometimes it really is that one of the agents doesn't understand the law or doesn't understand the forms and how they read, right? I had an agent, this is 2 days ago. I said, call the broker, and he said, it is the broker that I'm dealing with. I said, okay, give me your name and number. So I looked her up, I called her, and she just didn't know how the form worked. Sometimes that happens, right? So she's the broker for the company, and she just doesn't know how the form works. So she's about to give her client bad advice, cancel a deal, in which case we'd all have to sue, and not fun. So I called her and I helped her understand it. But a lot of times there is a misunderstanding because agents wrote out some language of their own, and maybe it wasn't very clear. So one of the first things that we do with this is, number one, make sure you're using all the approved forms. There's forms that are created for almost every scenario. And if you're making up your own language and you're not sure, call your managing broker, because they can probably tell you, hey, there's a form for that. And that happens multiple times a day for me. Somebody calls me and say, what should I do? And I say, there's a form for that. Oh, really? I didn't know. And sometimes people that have been in the business over a decade, right? They just didn't know. So, but if there ever is a question, then just write it out very clearly and simply in the contract. Okay, this one, I need to delete that because we used to have a 3% EAC versus comments about splitting the commission 50-50. That's no longer an issue because now that's all spelled out in the contract. Let's talk about this one, getting paid directly by a client. Can we get paid by a client directly? Let's say that you go out showing homes to a client, show homes to them for 6 months, they decide not to buy. Their parents talk them into moving into their basement to try to save money, right? But they're very grateful for your time. They say, we want to give you $1,000. Thank you so much for all of your time over the last 6 months. Amanda, what do we do? So yeah, make it out to Amanda Jensen, right?
It all has to go through the broker.
Okay, and is that because equity's greedy?
No.
No, it's because it's state law that says that you cannot get compensated for real estate activities by any other means than through your broker, right?
Yeah.
So if it gets paid to your broker, they make the check out to Equity Real Estate. We don't take the full fees because we don't have a full file. We don't have full liability. We just got a buyer agency agreement that timed out or was canceled. That's it. Maybe a letter of explanation as to why you're getting paid. And that's our full file. Very little liability there. So we take our minimum fees to process payroll, which is $150, and you get the rest of it. Okay, but you get paid directly by a client. They can write a check to equity and we can pay you. All right, let's talk about referral fees. This is where I like having people from other states. Miles, do you have limits on referral fees there? Like if you did a great deal for John Smith and he refers his sister Jane to you, what can you give John?
For referrals, I know that you have to be consistent overall more than anything. And referrals and gifts, I believe, have different caps in this state.
So referrals, at least in Utah, were capped at $250. This is one of our dumbest laws ever. But it has to be an unsolicited referral. So the minute I say I can give you $250 for a referral, I have now solicited a referral and I'm in violation of the law. So what I say is state law says that I can give you up to $250 for a referral. And now I'm just telling people what the law says. I'm not soliciting anything. It's dumb, right? That's dumb. But that's the way it's worded. So I can't go on Facebook and say, hey, I'm doing a promo. Anybody that sends me a client gets XYZ, because now I've solicited a referral. I can't do that, at least in Utah. But I am capped at $250. And I really like what Miles said, is that a referral and a gift is different. So again, John Smith was my client. Here you referred Jane to me. I can give $250. But when I close the deal with John, what can I give him? Can I give him a new fridge? That's $1,000. Well over the limit. Can I give him a cruise? Thanks for working with me, John. It was a stressful process. I want to send you on a cruise. And I do a shopping spree with him. Buy him a big screen TV. Spend $1,000. What do you guys think? And this, by the way, should cross all state lines. What can I do as a gift? Anybody? Have you all heard of RESPA? Okay, Real Estate Settlement Teachers Act? I don't know, something like that. Anyways, RESPA is a thing that none of us can violate. It's a federal thing, right? It says, and by the way, this is state law in Utah regarding gifts, is I can give a gift to my client as long as it doesn't violate RESPA. So that is, if the lender knew about it, would they be okay with it? Does the lender care if I give my client a $1,000 fridge? No, not usually. Do they care if I give my client a cruise? No, not usually. What if I give my client $4,000 outside of closing? Does the lender care about that? Yep, pretty much every time. So I'm giving them a cruise worth $4,000. Lender doesn't care, right? But if I give them cash outside of closing, lenders do care. So in .loop, we actually have a little template there for a gift letter. And if you're in another state, we created this one for Utah. We've actually got Utah's law copied and pasted right at the top. But anytime you give a gift to a client, you can use that gift letter to protect yourself. We have had agents turned in because you can market gifts. Buy or sell with me before the end of the year, and I will give you $1,000 shopping spree, right? As long as I've talked to my lender about it and that's fine, great. But we had one of our agents turned in. The Division of Real Estate calls us and says, hey, they've been turned in for this. We produced this gift letter signed by the lender. So the lender was aware that this is what we were doing. And the division said, all right, looks like you're good, right? And in this case, surprisingly, it was an agent that gave $1,000 cash, and their lender was okay with that. I was surprised by that. I would not recommend that because most lenders are not. But I see all the time. People make deals to give money outside of closing. We'll just leave $1,000 on the kitchen table, right? Fix this problem. That is, first of all, it's a double contract, usually, which is fraud. That's mortgage fraud. Anything that you give, the lender should know about it, and your clients as well. If your clients are giving things, it should all be above board. And so, one of the safest ways to do this, like I do see agents being saying that we'll give you $2,000 at closing. Can I give you $2,000? No, but I could give you $2,000 towards your closing costs, right? Now it's on the closing disclosure. Saw it. Great, right? So the form of the gift is very important. How it's delivered is very important. But I always avoid giving cash. There are ways to give an equivalent gift, still be compliant with RESPA, not get in trouble. All right, advertising is a big one. Here's the real simple rule. Does anybody know the rule offhand? The name of the brokerage has to be on all of your advertising. Okay? And so if you're in, let's say that you're in Equity Real Estate Advisors or Equity Real Estate Oklahoma or whatever it is, right? At least for Utah, I can speak for Utah. You can say Equity Real Estate, or if your branch name is Equity Real Estate Advisors, you can do that as well. But you just have to have Equity Real Estate. Can I just do equity? The answer is no, because we're not registered under the state by that. We are registered with the state with Equity Real Estate, where our branch names are registered with the state as Equity Real Estate Advisors or Buckley or whatever. But I have to have my advertising done in a name that's registered with the state. And that has to be on everything. So what if I do door hangers? Do I need door hangers? Yes. Obviously, it's got to be on my sign, right? But what if I've got my team name? I'm trying to brand myself. I've got the lead team and building my brand. And so I've got my own custom names. Do I still need Equity Real Estate on there? Yes. What about on a Facebook post? Yes. Okay. On my website? Yes. Okay. It's got to be there. And again, these fines are typically pretty little, $150, $500 for something like that. But still a crappy way to spend money. So real simply, just go through any type of marketing that you do and make sure that it has Equity Real Estate. It has to be the name that is registered with the division. Here's the number one pitfall. We've saved the best for last. The number one reason for lawsuits against agents, brokers, and our clients is we didn't properly disclose. So here's how this plays out for you guys. I'm going to stop sharing the screen because this is our last conversation. Here's how it plays out typically. And again, it's very similar to that limited agency scenario. We had an incident in Park City. We had one out of Colorado for $240,000. We had one in Park City for $90,000. That one I was a little bit more involved in because it was here in Utah. So here's how it played out, right? Seller sells their home and didn't disclose something about their well. It's a well. And so the buyer sues them. And in the course of talking with their attorney, the seller all of a sudden determines that they had a conversation with their real estate agent about the well, and the realtor said, oh, you probably don't need to disclose that. Now, our realtor's like, oh crap, we never had that conversation. That was never a part of it, but now it's he said, she said, and we're wrapped up in this lawsuit, right? Settled for $90,000. That was our settlement. Pretty garbage, right? So sometimes agents ask, okay, we've got our seller's disclosures, but also as a required part of our seller checklist, we have a seller disclosure confirmation form. Have you guys seen that form in there? It's basically a little one-page form that says, hey, we didn't have any sidebar conversations with the seller about anything. Anything that happened, it's disclosed. And it's really good because it not just educates the client, but educates the agent. And the client signs that. And our lawsuits from this type of thing have almost completely gone away. Like since we put this form into play, because we saw this kind of thing happening over and over, Since we made this form a required form, it has protected our agents so well for the last 2 or 3 years. We almost never see a lawsuit based on disclosures. So if you haven't seen that form yet, go in and check it out. It's the seller disclosure confirmation form. And it educates you really well. And says we don't have sidebar conversations. So when somebody calls me and says, well, what do you think about this? Put it in there. Why not? Attorneys over and over say, you never get sued for over disclosing. You always get sued for under disclosing. So I don't know if my sprinklers work. I haven't had a chance to turn them on. What should I disclose? Disclose that. You know? This is one that I just had. Our toilet overflowed. This was actually my ex. So I knew the toilet had overflowed because it was my kid that did it, right? And this was years and years ago, but it overflowed and it flooded and water dripped down into the basement. Do I need to disclose that? Sure, right? Here's what I really, like red flags like crazy go up. Anytime somebody's lived in a home for any amount of time, their seller's disclosures are squeaky clean. Like that is impossible. You cannot own a home and not have problems, right? So when people say, what should I do? I mean, this is a tiny thing. Should I disclose it? I'm like, absolutely, because it actually makes it look better. When I read seller disclosures and they're disclosing all of these tiny things, I'm like, this is honest. We've got a really honest person here, and that's fantastic. So I feel so much better. And yet at the same time, our inclination is, it's not a big deal. It's going to scare people. It's exactly the opposite. People feel so much better when they see sellers' disclosures that are very comprehensive. So this is the number one pitfall. And with just a little bit of experience, I mean, what I'm saying makes sense, right? When you guys receive those sellers' disclosures and they include all this stuff, you're like, that is awesome. Like all these little things that went wrong, they got them fixed. Aren't you more at peace with that than squeaky clean seller disclosure? I am. And it's kind of almost reverse psychology, but I like seeing all those little details. So anyways, the bottom line is when a seller comes to you and says, what about this? Do we need to disclose that? The answer is almost always absolutely. What if it doesn't fit on those seller disclosure forms that we have? The seller disclosure forms say right in them, these are not meant to be comprehensive. So you can add an extra page. Your client can type out a description of what happened, a description of the repairs they went through. It's one of the reasons why I don't like sending sellers disclosures via .loop, because then people they're limited with the space they have to give an explanation. They hit the end of that, and the fields don't expand. I'm like, well, okay, I guess that's all I need to do. It's all the space they gave me, right? I don't like to do that. So usually sellers disclosures is one that I will print out and give to them. And I'll tell them if you don't have space, add another page, type up another page with a good description of everything going in there. But the number one thing you guys can know to protect yourself is anybody ever says, what do you think about this? Do we need to disclose this? The answer is yes. And again, we're down to material facts. So if the buyer knew about it, and it would affect their decision to either purchase or the price they would be willing to pay, that's a material fact. Hey, there's a new highway coming in right next to us. Material or not, doesn't affect my property. I'm not going to get condemned so that the city can buy out all the houses they're buying all the houses next door down that street. Is having a freeway going past affect the value of my property? Yeah, it does, right? So all of those things, those are material. That's why HOA minutes are so important. So when you go through the seller's disclosures, in fact, can I tell you guys a little secret? This is the dark side of me. If ever an agent of mine does something really terrible that causes me to lose my license, right? So I can't be a broker anymore, you know what I'm going to do? This is my plan. I'm going to get my attorney's license. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make offers on homes. I'm going to put $10,000 earnest money, and I'm going to wait for the seller disclosure. I'm going to put a 3-day seller disclosure deadline. And Miles, is this true in Oklahoma? Like, your seller disclosures are more than just what you know about the property, right?
Right. Yeah, there's all sorts of other conditions and terms in there.
Okay. So, anybody experienced on here, like, how often do you not get? In fact, let me share my screen. This is a brilliant plan. I'm telling you guys right now. This is brilliant. Here's let's go to our purchase contract. Hold it up. Seller disclosures. Look at this. I've got to have a written seller disclosure about everything, right? Need a lead-based paint disclosure, commitment for title insurance. Has anybody experienced in here ever gotten seller's disclosures that didn't include their commitment for title insurance? Like almost all the time, right? A copy of the CC&Rs, a copy of recent minutes, budget, and financial statements. Guys, agents are terrible at doing this. This is all required by that seller disclosure deadline. So here's my nefarious plan. Get my attorney's license so I can sue people for free, right? And then I just go make a shit ton of offers. You and you and you and you. I put a 3-day disclosure deadline. And when I don't have a copy of the HOA minutes and the CC&Rs and all of that stuff, you're in default. And you know what? I'll be kind and we'll settle for $5,000. I could take you for $10,000, but now we're facing lawsuits and I really don't want to get embroiled in that. And I'm just going to make $5,000 a day every single day of the month because agents don't provide disclosures. All of you experienced people, am I right? Could I make an absolute killing with that business model? Anybody? We've got a lot of quiet people out here that aren't sharing their faces with me. I want to hear from some of you guys. You guys have been in this business. Do you see your clients, or when you're dealing with buyers, you see sellers that are at risk for that on nearly every single transaction? So we're going to be the buyer's agents that don't put ourselves at risk. We're going to be the one that makes that asshole Eric Lee, the attorney, go bankrupt. Because he's not going to take advantage of our clients because we know about the seller's disclosures. And for example, if I'm dealing with the HOA and I'm having a hard time getting all of those things, then I don't agree to a contract with a 3-day seller disclosure deadline. I give myself a week. Make sure that I have time to get those things in play. Or I'm the listing agent that the minute I take the listing, I'm hunting down that information, right? I'm not waiting until I get an offer. I'm hunting that stuff down and have it all ready to go, saved in a file, ready to ship off, okay? So guys, that is our training today. I hope this was beneficial to you. All those little details matter. That's what people are paying us for, is the details. Anybody can look at a form and do fill in the blank. Understanding how they work, these common pitfalls, are the things that make you guys worth your money. And you're very much worth it. And I hope you all understand that and know that. It's an integral part of you being willing to put yourself out there in a sales position, saying, hey, you need to hire me and I have value. I hope today you understand how much value you have because of all of these pitfalls.